Every single thing you experience in this life is filtered through the lens of your mindset. Imagine the power you'd have over your life if you could choose the nature of that filter.
You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deep reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher, and this is another episode diving into
the science and spirit of happy.
The logical path to soul.
G'day y'all, and welcome back. This episode is, I'd like to say that this is when we're really going to dive into the sustainable dreams theory. My theory on creating any kind of big goals, but essentially creating fulfillment and happiness in your life. But I think that we have really been discussing the theory in a pretty broad way and pretty specific way for the whole season. However, when we dive into the 4 layers of human experience, human life, human's being, which is the mind, heart, soul, and body, we're really going to start to get strategic about our happiness, about our progress. And that is going to bring us into a much more specific realm when we're talking about the sustainable dreams theory in particular. So I want to kind of talk about mindset just for a second, because this is a major topic in our culture, in our global culture, in our Western culture, in general, in recent times. And I feel like just in the last episode, habits. We talked about habits. We talked about healthy habits, and I feel like that has been so overdone. Like, you could Google, healthy habits and or happiness habits, and just find so much information on it. But what we spoke about, like habits versus coping mechanisms last episode, that's really, really unique vantage point on something very important and something so proficiently spoken about because of its importance. And mindset, I feel like, is almost as talked about, almost as often as like something like habits is. However, I feel like mindset is particularly important to really nail down, to really explain, to really define, because I feel like it is also largely misunderstood, where habits, healthy habits, have been in discussion, in knowledge for a very long time. Plus, they tend to lend themselves more readily to the mental and physical sphere, which is what Western, and I would argue global culture, modern culture, as in modern culture and in this day and age, not the modern period. But our culture globally is is quite well versed in the mental and physical, I think. The emotional and spiritual, however, remain quite mysterious. And a lot of the times, actually, what we're attributing to like Eastern culture is more like ancient Eastern culture. And Western culture, if we get into like the Western ancients, they were just as like esoteric. So, talking about, I love Aristotle. I'm talking about these ancient, who we consider scientists, ancient scientists. They were very much concerned with the soul and with a less linear method of discussion and discovery. So it isn't really East versus West. It isn't really cultural per se, placing importance on either, the mental and physical sphere or the, emotional and spiritual. It's more a matter of timing, of focus, of values. So I guess you could attribute this to cultural significance, but I don't think it's specific to cultures, what we value. I think it is part of our evolution as human beings, as human becomings, that we focus on whatever shortcomings we have in the moment. I think that it is, back to this Aristotelian view of humanity, that we are growing towards some sort of, perfection. And in doing so, we focus on different things at different times. So for the past however long, I don't know, I think I've actually read some statistics, just basing what we focus on in personal development. You can sort of see the shift from sort of character based focus to like more action based focus. It's more like being okay with yourself versus doing cool stuff, which is kind of like the emotional spiritual sphere, like feeling good in yourself, like self-confidence, self-esteem, feeling like trusting yourself, that kind of radical self-trust I've been talking about. That is really the sphere of heart and spirit versus doing cool stuff and being a cool person in the eyes of other people, and having cool things and accomplishing stuff. That's the realm of mind and body. And it doesn't really matter when those shifts changed. That's not the point. I think the point is that perhaps we had a really good handle on, emotional, spiritual well-being, and then focused on the mental and physical sphere because that was kind of out of control. But now I think that we do have a really good grasp on the mental and physical sphere with science and technology and, poverty reduction and human rights and gender equality and all of those things, protecting people's physical well-beings and having these discussions about, justice, etc., in the mental sphere. And now we're realizing, I think, on a global level that we're missing some things, right? We just went through a long extended period where we all had plenty of time to sit with ourselves in isolation a lot of the times and really address our values and really address how we felt, because a lot of our distractions, a lot of our coping mechanisms were taken from us. And now more than ever, I think the focus is turning to how we feel. And so we're discussing things like mindset. I've discussed it just very briefly, the manifestation kind of trend towards controlling your thoughts, And maybe it's sort of just, I'm imagining myself like scratching a scratch and win card, like scratching the surface of like directing energy. We're becoming kind of enamored with this idea that we could create a better life, or that feelings, how we feel about ourselves, is really important. This pushback, this body positive movement, pushback against the weight loss industry, focusing on how we feel versus, what we physically are, what weight we are, the measurables, the data involved. And in doing so, in focusing on the way that we feel, and our values and energy, we're tending towards talking about mindset in ways that it really shouldn't be. And when we look at psychology and the discipline of psychology, and we look at, what we're describing as psychological well-being, which we associate with the mind, which we try to treat via the mind, via drugs that affect the mind, or via talking in therapy, we're trying to address something that is both mental, but also emotional and spiritual. And I'm going to discuss emotional and spiritual well-being in the next 2 episodes. But I really just wanted to explain briefly why the way that I talk about mindset is different, and how important it is, and why, if you have become frustrated with mindset work, if you have become frustrated with promises of, manifestation, or the focus on, positive thinking, etc., if you've become frustrated with that, I want to give you a little bit of hope that there's a very good reason that you're frustrated with it. Because we were trying to lump, an apple, an orange, and a pear into like the acorn basket, essentially. And I hope to separate out all of those baskets for you and make it a lot more linear. Like, there's a pear tree, there's a pear basket. Okay. That is not to say that mindset is not important. It's incredibly important. And there's very good reason why we focus on it. There's very good reason why there's so much attention being paid to it. One of the reasons is that it is the filter. I used to call it the lens, but it really is the filter. In when we're using a camera, we put a filter over the lens traditionally. Right now we use filters, digital filters. But traditionally you'd put a filter over the lens and it would color distort what the camera saw. Now your mindset is exactly like that. And I love the analogy, the filters on Instagram or Snapchat's pretty extreme. I don't know, but I guess, yeah, some people's mindset can, set a puppy dog filter onto everything. But I think, we actually love those things because it's kind of, oh my gosh, I was just thinking of another analogy, like rose tinted glasses. If we'd love to put on these rose tinted glasses and live in a world where we could be seen however we want to be seen, or see ourselves however we want to see ourselves. And these filters that we use, I think that we gravitate towards using them because we love the idea of being able to change the way that we see things in an instant. People love to get down on a quick fix, like the diet pill industry is a great example. And there's a lot of hate going around for the online filters these days. But I think that comes largely from our disappointment over those things actually working. because we intuit that change could be that simple. And it can be. And that's what I'm here to discuss in the next 4 episodes, how to make that change. When we're talking about mindset, I would say, although mind, heart, soul, and body all play equal roles, they have equal power, they have equal weight, I think it's fair to say that nothing is more powerful than mindset. That is because of the authority that mindset has over all of the other parts. Mindset acts like an interpreter for all of your other parts. You know, if it, like I was running the other day and I had some knee pain. Now I have a friend who was running who had knee pain, who had to stop running because, she was overrunning and it wasn't good for her body. I was running and I had knee pain and it was, I was a bit stiff and I needed to just warm up a bit more and the pain went away. The other information that you could gather from that for somebody else in a different situation, that maybe their form was off and they needed to think a little bit more about how they were running. So the exact same signal from the body can be interpreted in so many different ways, and the interpreter really is the mind. The mind is also the police. It can dictate how you speak to yourself and to other people. The mind is where the self-talk tool, what I call the ST tool, the self-talk tool, is recorded and lives. And the mind, although the self-talk tool could be recorded from different places and affect, your heart and your spirit, etc., depending on what's being said, the noticing, being able to notice it, happens in the mind. And being able to reprogram it is a choice that the mind has to make. How you process everything around you. So from, physical pain or walking into a room and getting a bad vibe. Did you walk into the room and get a bad vibe because you're being triggered, because you're having anxiety from past experiences? Did you walk in the room and get a bad vibe because, people have been talking about you badly in a way that's lacking integrity? Or did you walk into the room and have a bad vibe because, and this actually happened to me. I walked into a cafe once with my baby and I looked around like the place was being stuck up or something. And I live in Canada. That doesn't really happen. It's very like American thing or something. But I was looking around like something like an emergency was happening. There was a vibe and nothing was happening. And I just thought that I was having like mother anxiety, like postpartum anxiety about like bringing my child by myself to this cafe. Anyways, I sat down and lo and behold, a security guard actually came and sat next to my table because I was close to the bathrooms and there was like an altercation situation happening in the bathrooms. I don't know if something was happening in the cafe before and went to the bathrooms or what, but there was something happening and there was a vibe. So you could be entering, a situation where you need to be alert, some sort of, dangerous situation, or maybe, you're feeling super funny because, the love of your life is standing across the room and they're noticing you and all of a sudden you're, feeling butterflies. The mind can interpret those things. The mind can also decide whether you act on these intuitions or not, because everything goes through the mind. I use the analogy of a courtroom where all of your different feelings from the different parts of you can come to your mind and be like, yo, I got this really bad feeling. I think these girls, they've been talking about you and and your mind can be like, no, but they're really nice people. I think that we're having social anxiety. Or it can be like, actually, I know that person has this, propensity to do this thing to other people. So maybe that's happening to me now. And you can reason and then make decisions these are very small situations, but imagine all the small situations in your life. If you could harness the power of your mindset, if you could harness this to make the right choices, you could really do anything. That leads us to the realm of kind of manifestation. And is it manifestation if you can harness the control that your mindset has over the way that you speak, the way that you react, the way that you behave? If your mindset can mitigate, the feelings that you have and direct them towards something productive, and you could create anything in your life, is it manifestation? Maybe. I've certainly had some uncanny things happen. I feel like personally the manifestation is more on the realm of energy and soul set, and I will discuss that in a couple episodes for sure. What mindset most definitely does do is it directs everything you do. And therefore, it has a massive role to play in everything that happens to you. I like to think of mindset being in two different categories. I like to think of the way that your mindset is programmed as either being productive or destructive. So I don't really like to add to the positive thought obsession. I feel that is part of the misconceptions of mindset and what its role is. Positive thinking has its place for sure. I've seen some things about, motherhood. If you're stuck at home with the kids, if you have chosen to be, a stay-at-home mother, or, you haven't chosen to be a stay-at-home mother, you're just there after work with your kids and they're, you don't have all of the energy that the situation requires for you to feel, happy and fulfilled in it. You can definitely, in a situation like that, choose to either think positively or think negatively about it. Like, oh my God, these kids, and they want so much, and oh my God, I just can't even do these things or those things, and all I really need is to go to yoga, and I can't do that, and holy shoosh, the society isn't supporting me as a woman, and my husband, he can't even pick up his, dirty laundry or do the dishes for me, and holy moly, I have all this stuff to do. And all of those things can be absolutely real. And this is why, it's really important that we don't just focus on positive thinking, because there can be really, really big issues there that need to be addressed. However, if it is what it is, if the situation is what it is, the kids need to eat, and you're not, able to do anything aside from deal with this situation and feed them or whatever it is. And you have to be there. You love these children. Nothing wrong is happening. It's just kind of a big ask at the moment. Or you have a little bit of a issue that you're trying to work through with negative self-talk, or, a victim mentality or something like that. You can choose to turn it around and to think in the situation of something different, just think in some kind of positive way. And it doesn't have to be gratitude. Gratitude is a very powerful one, but it doesn't even have to be gratitude. It can just be it is what it is, here I am, and I might as well just enjoy my kids' company, because what the heck else am I gonna do? I'm just gonna feel bad. There's nothing that I can do about the situation, so I might as well just lean into it and deal with it, or ask somebody to help, grate some cheese for me or something like that. That's more in the line of a productive mindset, but sometimes it requires a choice to think positively in order to get productive with the situation. The way that I like to think about mindset and reprogramming especially with self-talk, reactions, etc. I was just discussing how almost everything, 95% of what we do is habitual, including the ways that we think. The way that I like to think about choosing, positive thinking versus negative thinking was brought to me via a book on neuroplasticity. So, neuroplasticity essentially explains how our brains are not hardwired, they're more silicon wired. So, they change throughout our lives based on experiences. So, there's a saying in neuroscience that neurons that fire together wire together. And essentially, what that means, I am not a neuroscientist, but in my mind, what that means is that if you've ever gone cross country skiing, and I'm going to, bear my Canadianness to you all right now. If you've ever gone cross country skiing, if there aren't tracks, it's really hard to cross country ski, okay? Laying down tracks to cross country ski is really difficult. And then going over tracks is a lot less difficult. And going over well used tracks is very, very easy. So when we are choosing to think a different way, so we're choosing to fire different neurons, we're wiring them like we're laying out a cross-country ski trail. The first time it's really difficult. The second time it's a lot less difficult. The 10th and 15th time it gets super easy. And that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. That's awesome. Yes, brain plastic. Make those tracks. Easy peasy, right? Just do the hard thing. Life gets easy. However, the other side, that is my motto to life, P.S. Do the hard thing, life gets easy. The other side to that motto is if you do the easy thing, life gets hard. So the other side to this neurons firing together, wiring together, is that the ones that have been firing together are wired together via effing bobsled tracks. So you are going to shoot down those tracks so fast you don't even know what's happening, and all of a sudden you are in Badville. You're in Destructiveville. So it becomes incredibly important to pull yourself off the bobsled track, which is, a little bit more difficult than just laying down, some new tracks, which is the hard part to life getting easy. So that being said, positive thinking, if you've got like negative bobsleds, it's absolutely important for you to, pull the bobsled off the negative bobsled track and, put on your skis and start creating, positive ski tracks. And in time, those will become the bobsled tracks. And you aren't even gonna come home and be like, oh my God, this house, I can't take it. It's so much and I hate everything. You're just gonna come home and be like, woo, here we go. Everybody get on board, and you're gonna get productive and you're gonna deal with the challenges that arise. I think it's also very important. I was gonna say this till the end, but here we go. It's also very important for you to recognize that the mind doesn't want happiness. I was explaining this in the Healthy Habits a little bit last episode, but the mind doesn't really want happiness. What is fulfillment to the mind actually requires quite a bit of challenge. It likes to be challenged. You think about that negativity bias, it is, that we've talked about before, it is hungry. The mind is hungry for problems. So it likes to eat up problems. It likes to overcome challenges. That is a very big part of fulfillment, is that kind of clambering, of mental activity. However, what happiness is, the way that we interpret happiness, the way that we think about it, fulfillment has a lot to do with peace in the mind. So we don't necessarily need, no challenges. That actually, if you're familiar with the term ennui, it's I think it's French origin, but in the 18th and 19th century, I believe. Maybe it was before that, but in the era of aristocracy, there was this kind of depression called ennui, which is just people not having anything to do. And it typically happened to aristocrats who, didn't have to make a living. And lacking challenges, the mind actually gets pretty like blasé, and you feel kind of crap. So we don't need total peace or lack of challenges to feel really good. In fact, we do need challenges to feel really good. And happiness is not the realm of the mind. So, you don't need to come home and think, wow, I am so grateful for my kids every day. It is so great that we have food in the fridge. But gratitude is a very powerful thing you can choose to create very specific traits, which I'm going to talk about probably mostly in Soul Set. But I'm just trying to illustrate that you don't have to think positively to be happy. Like, you don't have to be having positive thoughts to be happy. So why is this important? Well, if we think about, this scenario, I just illustrated this scenario where productive thinking saved the day. So you walk into the situation and there's like all these problems. Like, you don't possibly have the time that it's going to take to get the dinner ready, to get the kids in bed, to be able to, get your hour of, reading or chilling, or, maybe you have like a side hustle that you need to get some work done, whatever. You just don't actually, like, there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. It's not going away. Productive thinking is, here's a block of cheese, can you please grate it? Hey honey, can you please empty the dishwasher? Okay, my husband has left like his stuff here. I'm gonna have a talk with him later about that. He also like didn't do the dishes. Like, I'm gonna call him and get him to do them right now. Whatever. Versus destructive thinking. And I don't think that you even need to have that illustrated. You can just imagine. I think I was kind of illustrating it a little bit before. But you can just imagine how different the situation would be if you go into that situation just having destructive thoughts. I can't do this. Like, I'm this victim. Even if you are a victim. If you are a victim, you need to get out. Your kids can't victimize you, though. P.S. I will probably do an entire season on parenting, but that's definitely one of the things that we'll talk about. So in a different situation, if you are being victimized, you still have to get productive about your thinking. Maybe like your husband is like really, really, like, you shouldn't be married to this person. Like, maybe like the problems are that big, or maybe, there are other things that need to happen. There are boundaries that need to be laid, like that you need to come to compromises that are actually followed through on. Productive thinking is going to get you there a lot faster than destructive thinking. If you have a problem at work with, another employee, or even with a project, if you're having productive thinking, you find solutions, right? If you're having destructive thinking, you find like chaos, essentially, and you'll corrode your ability to actually deal with these things productively. So I like to think in terms of productive versus destructive, because productive aligns with progressing. So productive aligns with you getting problems solved. Destructive aligns with you not getting things solved, with, constricting situations, victimhood, lack of power, being stuck, versus pathways out. So sometimes productive thinking isn't like positive. Sometimes it's negative. Sometimes it's, I gotta leave this situation. Sometimes it's like, this isn't working for me. Sometimes it's like, I gotta, cut my losses here. The one thing productive thinking always will B, though, is on your team, whereas destructive thinking really is not. And it matters. It matters that you are on your team, that your mind is on your team. If you have your mind on your team, you can get everybody else on your team. This is especially important if you have experienced bad stuff. The mind is not here to dance a jig and be, feeling these wonderful feelings of fulfillment and joy. It really is to problem solve. And if you've experienced some pretty bad stuff, and especially if you've experienced bad stuff over and over again, where I was talking about micro trauma. So the focus can become very negative. And that comes from a beautiful place. That comes from your mind being on your team. That comes from your mind experiencing problem after problem after problem, or problems that they can't escape, that there is no productive thought or pattern of thinking that you can get out of. And this comes from childhood because, which lays back to my comment that you can't be victimized by children because children are, inherently victims to whatever we do to them. They're entirely vulnerable, so they're not to blame ever. So you as a child, you weren't to blame, and you don't have any agency over what's happening. You essentially, your mind can be very overactively seeking out problems and seeking out the negative. So the objective truth is you're probably okay now. You're not a child anymore, I don't think, if there's any children watching. Hi. But you're probably not a child anymore. If you are, you won't be forever, and then you're going to be able to make your own decisions and you can get happy too. So if you're not okay, you can just fix it. And that's where we get into productive thinking, right? The mind really is the control room. Now, malfunction, I'm going to call it malfunction. What it really is malprogramming is essentially the only thing keeping you from the life of your dreams. Because the mind in this control room capacity can direct you towards the life of your dreams in every respect. This is what Buddhists call right speech and right thought. What gets in the way of right speech and right thought? Because right speech and right thought, meaning speech and thought aligned with the pure purpose, inspiration, connection, the spirit of yourself and all that is, being in collaboration, in connection, clarity. That is natural, and if you're there natively, then you don't even need to think about that. You're just going to have right speech and right thought. You can't imagine doing something else. For the rest of us, what gets in the way is experiencing what I call reality IQ dents and divots. So I was using the analogy of a lens or a filter when discussing mindset. This is an especially good analogy for mindset because it is how we see things. Viewing things really is aligned with our mindset. So we have a lens, and it is pure at birth. It is totally aligned with our clear lenses in our heart set, what I call heart set, soul set, and body set. My child is entirely clear on how he feels, what he needs, all those things, completely clear and expressive and, completely on it. That is how we are born. Now, reality IQ dents are when the way that we see things has been altered by somebody else. Somebody else has had input on the way that we see things that alters them. They make a dent in our lens. This usually happens people in positions of authority, or even, generalized feelings or theories, cultural beliefs within a society can make these dents on the way that we see things. Given enough time and space, these dents heal on their own. Getting back to those healthy habits, we're talking about practices and healing. All you need to heal is space. So given enough time, these dents just disappear. And what happens with a dent is you feel really bad about it because you remember the way that you saw before. So you remember the way that you saw things, and then all of a sudden something's distorted, and somebody else did that to distort your view, and it's painful because all of a sudden you can't see the way that you saw things, and it is inherently feels wrong. It seems unjust, like it's not right, because the way that we see things, we just see things the way that we see things, like a baby. They just see things the way that they see things. It is what it is. It's true. It's subjective. It's entirely subjective. The way that we see things is the way that things are to us, period. So somebody denting our lens it's just corrosive. It isn't beneficial. When these dents aren't allowed to heal, they become divots. And what happens when they become divots and we start forgetting? That's when we start to get into the mindset of being stuck, because we saw in this pure way, it got dented. We were super upset about it. We thought it was totally unjust. We thought these people were completely wrong because we saw things so clearly in a completely different way. It's like arguing about whether this table is here or not to me. It doesn't matter if you can't see it. Well, it's glass. That's why you can't see it. I can see it. So it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. But if the dent continues to happen, it's not allowed space to heal. You can continue to tell me and tell me and tell me and tell me that this table is not here. It becomes kind of like a gaslighting. And then we start to get a divot that we have to accept that the table isn't there, that things are not the way that we see them. Apparently, I am not the person that I thought I was. Apparently, things aren't the way that I saw them to be. If these dents and divots are made permanent, then we get into what I call a reality IQ deficiency. So reality IQ dents and divots are small d's. Reality IQ deficiency is a big D. This is, I believe, where mental illness stems from, one of the places. And reality IQ deficiencies lead people to make dents and divots in other people. And diving into that is, as you can probably imagine, a little bit beyond the scope of a podcast. So I am putting together courseware. I'm putting together courseware for every single episode that will complement every single episode, that dives into every single one of these episodes in season 1 on the strategy, on the how-to, on the sustainable dreams theory, how to create, how to create the life of your dreams in a mode that's not just sustainable but easy and joyful and fulfilling and satisfying. You can get the very first lesson on getting unstuck for free. So you can get that wherever you're listening or watching to this. You can find it linked in whatever bio is there. We can temper our reality IQ with what I call base reality, or RIQ 0. So base reality is a sense of objective reality, where reality IQ is entirely subjective and therefore it's kind of inarguable. It's what people mean when they say, my truth. Base reality is objective truth. So something that can be proven through data or through one of the ways that I look at proving, a capital T truth, a base reality truth, is whether something has stood the test of time, something that has remained popular throughout ages, across cultures. I can attribute that to being, a truth of human nature, or something that, people are inherently attached to. these kinds of objective truths are things that can be illustrated and proven. So when we're dealing with a reality IQ that has denser divots, RIQD, we can use a base reality to get back in touch with our subjective, unadulterated lens of our personal reality IQ. It's by means of understanding these kinds of things, these objective truths, this base reality, such as everybody has a subjective viewpoint and therefore you can trust yours and yours is inarguable and yours is, your truth, etc. These kinds of getting in touch with these kinds of facts, these base reality fundamentals, RIQ 0, will give you a foundational point to kind of navigate what belongs to you and what doesn't, what limitations belong to the way that you personally view things purely, naturally, if you want to go there and use that word, and what has been inflicted upon you. That is an RIQ dent divot. Because the problem is that reality IQ deficiency, so reality IQ big D, will often masquerade as base reality. So it's incredibly important to get into an environment, get into a situation where you can, touch base with genuine base reality, because a reality IQ deficiency will claim that it is reality. That is one of the words that I have heard used with a destructive thought or belief more than anything else is being realistic, or being in touch with the real world. Even in politics, the theory of realism is the theory that is based upon hard power, which is essentially armies and guns and artillery, etc. Because realism in politics claims that the only realistic way to, be safe or be in an international environment is to have big guns, is to be able to kill and defend yourself physically. And there's a lot of different ways that you can look at this. You can look at this as being an outdated, realistic point of view that maybe was objective truth at some time but is no longer. Or you could just look at it as, something coming from the trauma of wars, the reality IQ deficiencies that came from gross trauma of, violence and invasions and whatnot. We know from data and from, like, for instance, the European Union, these kinds of instances where we can enter mutually beneficial relationships with sovereign states, peace, etc. We could look at so many different examples that will show us that there is a different reality, that it goes without saying that what reality really is definitely debatable in that instance. And it's definitely not clear cut or absolutely true. But somebody suffering from the reality IQ deficiency will absolutely counter what I'm saying, everything I'm saying, by claiming that this, reliance on hard power is real. That's reality. And I'm the one who's out of touch with reality. Now, if I'm a pacifist, say I am a diplomat in the making who wants to make an impact on the international order, and I actually went to school to be a diplomat. That was my intention at the beginning. But let's say that was my point of view and this was deeply in line with my purpose. Having, let's say, family members who were subscribing to this, theory of realism in a way that is RIQ big D, that they're actually suffering from a reality IQ deficiency, because there are plenty of realists who are completely reasonable people who could openly have a debate about why they believe what they believe, which is a completely different thing. But if somebody is suffering from a reality IQ deficiency, what happens with a reality IQ deficiency is it's totally intolerant of base reality, because in order to maintain the deficiency, it has to annihilate base reality. So it has to annihilate any kind of objective. Why am I air quoting objective? it has to. It has to annihilate any objective argument against the deficiency. So this is going to be incredibly damaging to somebody's reality IQ who sees things in a different way, especially if they are invested in seeing things a different way, in sharing their perspective. If their purpose is to actually come here and to change, the international order, the way that we globally organize ourselves, or even, on a much smaller scale. It doesn't have to be big stuff. This can be day-to-day stuff. Being told over and over again that you're wrong, that you can't trust the way that you see things, that you're not thinking clearly, that somebody else has a better understanding of reality than you, can be detrimental to your own reality IQ, but can also foster a reality IQ deficiency in and of itself. Getting in touch with that base reality again is just so important in the healing process, to reinstate your own subjective pure view, your clarity, your connection to your own thoughts and your own viewpoint on reality. The next step, or the next stage, or the place that all of us kind of want to be at, is what I call a high reality IQ. So RIQ plus is when we are aligned with divinity. So we are aligned, our subjective viewpoints, our reality IQ is aligned with the objective truth that anything is possible, but as well as aligned with all of the other IQs. So there are 3 other IQs. There's EIQ, emotional IQ, which we are now starting to discuss openly and define openly. But on top of that, there's an intuitive IQ and a somatic IQ. I'm going to dive into each and every one of these in the following episodes. But essentially, the RIQ plus, being in this high reality IQ, is aligning the IQs of your mind, heart, spirit, and body. And this is what, Brené Brown calls the wholehearted people. And what this results in is right speech and right thought naturally. But it also will pave the road to creating whatever kind of life that you want to create, creating your ideal fulfillment, your version of enlightenment, your self-actualization, your psychological and physical well-being. Buddhists practice right speech and right thought as a pathway to alignment. So their focus is more on like base reality IQ, this objective reality, and these objective truths that right speech and right thought can create the space for healing and connection to those objective truths, and healing the subjective RIQDs and whatnot. Mind, however, is not where we experience happiness. The emotional center, our heart set, and our soul set, our spirit, that is really where we experience what we think about when we think about happiness, when we talk about happiness. And what we truly desire is a feeling and a kind of a frequency, for lack of a better word. It's a vibe, it's a way that we feel that is emotional, but also kind of energetic. The mind, however, is kind of like a trap door. It's going to let it in or it's not. It's going to facilitate or it's going to block because of this control room aspect. So while the mind is very, very important, I want to dive in now in the next episode into the heart set, into emotional IQ, and into that facet of happiness and fulfillment and what we need to live and to experience a fulfilled life. So I hope you'll join me in the next episode. And until then, I bid you good day, y'all.